So what do we know about the perpetrator of yesterday's bombing? Has he been identified?
The bomber has been identified as 64-year-old Timothy Greenfield. Greenfield is a native of North Carolina who relocated to St. Petersburg in the 70s. Greenfield has been a registered Democrat since 1972, the same year he returned from service in Vietnam, where he was an explosives technician for the Army. According to police sources, he is cooperating and communicating with authorities. After rigging his car to explode, he allegedly walked a block down the street, sat down on a curb, and lit a cigarette to smoke while he waited for authorities to show. Upon their arrival, he approached officers and began openly talking about the bombing, leading to his questioning and subsequent arrest.
Wow. Has he said anything about why he did this?
From police sources, Greenfield says he chose the Sam Gibbons Federal Courthouse because it is the home of the U.S. Supreme Court's Middle District of Florida. He says he had been building his bomb for the past few weeks, ever since the violent Brooks Brothers riot in Miami in late November. A chilling note left at the scene by Greenfield makes his motives clear. "There will be gore, or there will be gore," scrawled in red ink over a clipping of Sunday's newspaper.
What do we know about casualties now? We didn't have much information last night, but I understand medical personnel have given an update, yes?
We do have an update on casualties. There are 5 dead and over 100 injured, with most of those injuries being from smoke inhalation or broken glass. As for the 5 lives unfortunately lost, we have information on 2 of the victims. Walter Chapman was a 37-year-old security officer who has worked at the Gibbons Courthouse since it opened 2 years ago. He was married with 2 children, and his family says that he was a kind and gentle man with a loving heart who would.
Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are receiving word on police scanners of an apparent shooting in South Tampa. This is breaking news, just coming in. There is an ongoing shooting at what appears to be the offices of the
Emergency message from the Tampa Police Department. Mass casualty shooting in progress at the headquarters of the Hillsborough County Democratic Party in South Tampa. All residents near this location shelter in place and lock all doors and windows. This is a local area emergency in effect for all areas within 1 mile both north and south of El Prado Boulevard. Check local news media for further information and avoid the area until the situation is concluded.
terror in Tampa. First a bombing, and then a shooting. Will the election violence end here, or will it continue to escalate? This is ABC Local News at 11 here in Tampa. We are continuing to follow today's story of a deadly attack and dramatic shootout in South Tampa. The shooting occurred around 2:10 Eastern Time at the headquarters of the Hillsborough County Democratic Party in South Tampa. The attack lasted for approximately 8 minutes before police arrived on the scene. Tampa police then engaged the suspect in a standoff and a shootout, during which the shooter was eventually killed. We go now to Chris, who has more information on the shooter and his motives. Chris?
Hi Lisa, we do have information from Tampa police that the shooter has been identified as 52-year-old Gary Helms, a native of Hillsborough County. Helms was known to law enforcement previously after his former employer notified the FBI of terroristic threats Helms had made against Democrats and the Clinton administration. We understand from police sources that Helms was a member of the Florida Citizens Militia, a right-wing terror group on the FBI's watch list. Helms entered the Democratic Party offices around 2:10 p.m. armed with a high-point rifle and began to open fire on workers and volunteers inside the building. When police arrived on the scene, Helms then barricaded the entrances to the building and engaged police in a 30-minute standoff during which over 100 rounds of gunfire were exchanged between him and the police. The shooting was brought to an end when police managed to get into the building through a rooftop entrance. Helms was then shot and killed at around 2:45 Eastern Time by Tampa SWAT officers.
You were telling me earlier during the break about other items found in the suspect's truck. Can you repeat that for our viewers, please?
Yes, according to police, there were multiple weapons recovered in Helms' truck, along with right-wing extremist literature and several crude incendiary devices. The weapons, in addition to the high-point carbine used in the shooting, included 2 hunting rifles, a handgun, and 3 Molotov cocktails. Whether Helms had plans bigger than the Democratic Party offices is unknown at this time. Due to his connections with the militia movement, police are still investigating to determine whether or not Helms acted alone. The FBI encourages anyone with information to call their anonymous tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI.
Protests have erupted across the nation today as the United States Supreme Court has handed down its verdict. Florida's 25 electoral votes will indeed go to George W. Bush. Gore supporters have flooded the streets of America's major cities today, inciting a likewise response by celebrating Bush supporters. The presence of both groups on the streets after the recent terrorist attacks in Tampa has law enforcement officials around the nation worried about the potential risk for violence. Already today in Tampa, there have been over 50 arrests reported before noon. Tactical response units are on standby in case things get any worse in what has already been a tumultuous week here in the Tampa area. Our correspondent Chris is on the streets with the crowd here in Tampa. What's going on now, Chris?
It's chaotic out here. Already the situation is starting to turn. Police lines are now moving in attempt to contain and separate the two groups before any more escalation can occur. There is a lot of pushing and shoving, and even a few punches thrown back and forth. Police concern had been on the nightfall, but here we are at just after 1 in the afternoon, and it looks like things may already be at a tipping point.
Certainly concerning news. According to reports, it is much the same outside of Florida as well, with similar protests and events across the nation. We'll continue to monitor this situation as it develops. Chris, what have police been saying about their concerns regarding
This is a law enforcement warning issued by the Tampa Police Department. Due to escalating protests and riots, all residents of the city of Tampa must remain at home and do not engage in protests. By emergency ordinance from Mayor Greco, a curfew will go into effect at 5 p.m. this evening and all non-essential travel outside your home will be restricted. Violent protests will be dispersed around this time and mass arrests will be made of any participants engaging in unlawful actions. This measure is in effect until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning.
I'm here in downtown Orlando, where things have in fact gotten violent. As of an hour ago, there have been multiple injuries, ambulance sirens have been almost non-stop. It's a violent scene, truly chaotic, where Bush and Gore supporters have been taking out their frustrations on each other that have built up over the course of this historically turbulent election cycle. Orlando police say that they are in contact with the governor's office in Tallahassee about possibly mobilizing the National Guard.
civil authorities have issued a civil emergency message for the city of Orlando at 3:22 p.m. effective until tomorrow at noon. The Florida Army National Guard has been mobilized by order of the governor of Florida to the city of Orlando in response to mass casualty riots. The National Guard is authorized to enforce law and order by means of lethal force if necessary. Armed rioters must lay down their weapons upon the arrival of the National Guard or they will be considered imminent threats and will be neutralized accordingly. Repeat, the National Guard is incoming to the city of Orlando with permission to shoot any armed rioters who do not lay down their weapons. Do not fire upon the National Guard or you will be met with lethal force. All residents of Orlando who are not involved in the riots or who remain at home with your doors and windows locked. Only answer the door to authorities. Report any suspicious or unlawful activity you may witness. Failure to report unlawful activity may result in criminal charges. Harboring armed rioters in your home will result in your arrest and prosecution. A curfew is in effect from 8 p.m. tonight until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. This civil emergency message is in effect from now until noon tomorrow.
The streets of Washington have for weeks been filled with hundreds of protesters, but today the number surged into the thousands after the Supreme Court made its decision. Florida's 25 electoral votes will go to George W. Bush, and so will the presidency. Authorities across the nation and especially here in D.C. are on high alert after recent election-related acts of terrorism in Florida. In Tampa, a car bombing at a federal courthouse killed 5 and injured 110. The following day, a retaliatory shooting at Tampa's Democratic Party killed 9 and injured 12. And then today, in Orlando, an hour of violence ended with National Guard intervention after 33 deaths and over 70 injuries. Here in D.C., a change of strategy is in order for the D.C. Metro Police. Where focus had previously been on the night, events in Florida happened in broad daylight, contrary to the expectations of law enforcement.
This is an administrative message from the Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia. A state of emergency has been declared by order of the mayor. As per this emergency declaration, a curfew has been enacted. This curfew will go into effect at 7 p.m. local time. The D.C. National Guard has been activated and is on standby. The National Guard will remain in place through the night and will assist the D.C. Metro Police in enforcing the curfew beginning at 7 p.m.
Local ABC News Orlando at 7. The death toll of today's riots is believed to be in the dozens. The Florida National Guard have arrived on the scene as Orlando police report being overwhelmed, pushed back from their positions by mobs of violent demonstrators. Our correspondent Ryan Parker has more.
That's right, Carolyn. I just got off the phone with the Orlando chief of police, and he says that even with the National Guard present, the situation is still not under control. The firearms among the crowd are really the main issue here. The fact that they don't know who is armed and who isn't poses a serious challenge to how the police and the National Guard have to formulate their approach. I'm told that
This is the Florida Army National Guard. National Guard soldiers have taken sniper fire from an assailant who remains at large. All residents shelter in place, lock all doors and windows, and do not answer the door to anyone until an all-clear is given. Report all suspicious activity immediately to the nearest National Guard member. If you spot the individual, do not approach nor try to apprehend them as they are to be considered armed and highly dangerous. Remain tuned to local media for further instructions and updates.
The Bush campaign has confirmed that Al Gore conceded the election to Bush in a phone call last night amid the violence in Florida. Today Al Gore broke his public silence for the first time since the Supreme Court verdict, appealing for calm and quote, rational thinking amid the chaos that has overtaken Florida and other parts of the nation. Gore says he is deeply saddened by the violent turn of events witnessed over the past several days, and that
The following message is transmitted at the request of the Office of the Governor of Florida. By order of the Governor, the state of Florida will declare martial law effective immediately. This is due to the numerous violent and deadly riots in cities such as Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, Tallahassee, and Tampa. Martial law goes into effect as of the end of this message and will remain in effect until the civil situation stabilizes.
We begin our broadcast tonight with some sad news. President-elect George W. Bush has passed away after suffering 2 close-range gunshots while greeting a crowd in Atlanta. George W. Bush was 54 years old. Bush had just left CNN headquarters after appearing on live national news for an hour with his opponent, Al Gore. Bush and Gore spoke together about the violence in Florida and gave a joint appeal for calm, merely 20 minutes before the fatal shooting. According to the FBI, the shooter was subdued by bystanders and taken into custody. The FBI has not publicly identified the shooter.
The following is a message from the D.C. Metro Police. A local area emergency is in effect for areas of the city near Observatory Circle and Embassy Row. If you are in the area of Observatory Circle, it is advised that you vacate the area immediately. The residence of the Vice President at 1 Observatory Circle is currently the site of an unruly and unlawful protest. Injuries have been sustained by law enforcement and vandalism has been inflicted against the property. The D.C. Metro Police are currently involved in dispersing the protesters from this location. Do not enter this area or attempt to interfere with law enforcement or you will be subject to prosecution.
My fellow Americans, This evening I want to speak with you about the ongoing civil conflict that is ravaging our country.
National Guardsmen from around the nation today are pouring into the city of Washington after yesterday's declaration of national martial law by President Clinton. The order comes amid riots that have overtaken the nation, as America reacts to the death of President-elect George W. Bush. The shocking assassination and its aftermath have resulted
This is an urgent civil emergency message from the D.C. Metro Police. An arson attack has occurred at the Supreme Court of the United States. Around 10 minutes ago, an unidentified assailant threw a brick through a window of the building, followed by an incendiary device which lit the interior of the structure on fire. Avoid the area of the Supreme Court until fire authorities declare the area open again. The D.C. Metro Police ask anyone with information on this attack to call immediately the MPD Anonymous tip line at 202-727-9099. This is an urgent criminal matter and any and all information regarding this matter will be appreciated. A cash reward of up to $2,000 may be given for any information which directly leads to an arrest.
Law enforcement authorities have issued a law enforcement warning for the city of Salem, Oregon, beginning at 8:52 p.m. and lasting until midnight tonight. City, state, and federal law enforcement are responding to a mass casualty attack in the vicinity of the Oregon State Capitol building. At around 8:45 p.m., witnesses reported gunfire striking protesters in the area. The assailant is believed to be armed with some form of bolt-action hunting rifle and may be using a church tower as a shooting perch. Avoid the First Methodist Episcopal Church of Salem at the corner of State Street and Church Street Northeast. State Street is closed until further notice between High Street Northeast and Cottage Street Northeast. The suspect remains at large. The suspect is described as a 5'9" white male of average build wearing khakis and a black shirt with a black vest. A red Toyota pickup truck may also be associated with the shooter. Be on the lookout for these as well as any suspicious or illegal activity. Report any and all tips to the Salem Police Department at 503-588-6123. End of message.
It's Christmas Eve, and it has been 1 week since President Clinton declared nationwide martial law in response to the ongoing crisis that has gripped our nation. Some analysts are calling it a second civil war, as tensions continue to flare in America's cities and suburbs despite military intervention. The number of dead continues to rise faster than it can be counted, but federal authorities estimate that the death toll so far is likely in the multiple thousands. The economic damage to our cities is unfathomable and surely worth an untold billions of dollars. With Clinton a lame duck president and with Cheney not yet seated in office, General John N. Abrams is now in essence the one currently in charge of the United States on the domestic front. Abrams says he aims to keep the military's mission impartial of the politics which have torn at our nation's seams. Military members are not permitted to engage in partisan attacks nor take sides in open conflicts, and those caught doing so will be met with a court-martial. As for Dick Cheney, little has been said from the now president-elect, as he is still residing with aides at an undisclosed location outside Washington. His staff have confirmed, however, that the inauguration on January 20th will proceed as scheduled at its regular location on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, as long as the security situation in D.C. permits it. The United States Army and the Capitol Police say that the security of the Capitol complex ahead of Inauguration Day is the highest priority.
A local area emergency has been declared due to an armed attack in the area of Pleasant Park. Around 3 minutes ago, a group of armed attackers opened fire on the George Bush Memorial service at Anaheim United Methodist Church. The California National Guard responded and killed one attacker upon arrival. An intense gun battle is ongoing between the National Guard and the other two shooters in the vicinity of Pleasant Park. South State College Boulevard between Vermont Avenue and Ball Road is closed until further notice, and traffic is being diverted away from the area. If you are near Pleasant Park, shelter in place until the National Guard gives an all clear.
FBI is now sharing information on the Maroon Front, the anarchist group which attacked a Bush Memorial service in Anaheim yesterday. According to the FBI, the Maroon Front is based in
Civil authorities have issued a civil danger warning for Los Angeles County at 12:32 p.m. effective until further notice. Military jet aircraft are committing airstrikes against civilian populations in Los Angeles. All residents of Los Angeles County are advised to seek shelter immediately and remain there until civil authorities give an all clear. Repeat, the city of Los Angeles is under aerial attack. Seek shelter immediately. Effective until all clear is given.
We are getting breaking news now that Andrews Air Force Base has been placed on lockdown, as of about 2 minutes ago. This is coming to us from military sources at the base, however they are not disclosing the reason for the lockdown. Witnesses in residential areas nearby report hearing gunfire near the front gates of the base, and that military police were involved.
This is an activation of the emergency alert system for the National Capital Region operational area. The Washington Beltway has been closed to traffic. All drivers on the Beltway currently are instructed to leave the Beltway at the nearest available exit. Residences along the Beltway between Branch Avenue and US Route 50 are advised to shelter in place in the lowest room of your home or structure until authorities give an all clear. At around 3:40 p.m., a gunman in a vehicle opened fire at the main gates of Andrews Air Force Base. The attacker then fled in their vehicle northbound along the Washington Beltway. The vehicle is described as a dark blue 1994 Dodge Durango SUV with Virginia license plate number EHK6548. Military police from Andrews Air Force Base then engaged in pursuit on the Beltway. The pursuit is still ongoing and now involves 2 helicopters from Andrews Air Force Base. To remain safe, remain off the Beltway until further notice. If you are on the Beltway, exit it immediately. If you are in a residence or structure near the section of the Beltway between Branch Avenue and US Route 50, shelter in place in a low interior room as there may be shots fired. Tune to local media sources for ongoing information regarding the situation.
The Department of Defense has released the identities of the 2 Marine fighter pilots who went rogue and bombed areas of Los Angeles on Monday. First Lieutenant Milton Clark and Second Lieutenant Bradley Schmidt, stationed out of Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, are alleged to have broken away from their formation whilst airborne. According to radar data, their F-16 fighter jets then turned directly toward Los Angeles, where they each flew 5 strafing runs over LA before returning to base at Miramar. Clark and Schmidt were then arrested upon landing. They are each charged with unauthorized absence, theft of military property, and numerous counts of first-degree murder. Both Clark and Schmidt will face the death sentence if convicted. Meanwhile, in San Diego, Navy Captain Roger Newell has been arrested after he allegedly ordered his own pilots from Naval Air Station North Island just outside San Diego to take off and attack Marine Corps Air Station Miramar in retaliation for the Los Angeles Christmas bombings. According to reports, the pilots refused to carry out the order and instead notified military authorities, who arrested Captain Newell within the hour. Newell is charged with conspiracy to commit mass murder, among other charges. In response to these shocking developments, General Abrams has released a memo urging commanders to purge anyone within their ranks with a questionable history regarding things like insubordination, conduct unbecoming of an officer, or unauthorized absence. These things, Abrams says, form the basis of a profile that applies to most cases of rogue military action thus far. By removing service members with questionable histories, Abrams hopes to cut down on rogue actions in the future in order to present a more unified and cohesive armed forces.
A civil authority has issued a civil danger warning for North St. Louis and Central St. Louis due to an ongoing aerial attack by helicopter. One H-64 Apache attack helicopter of the United States Air Force is currently attacking residential neighborhoods in St. Louis. All residents of the following areas are advised to seek shelter immediately and until further notice: The Ville, Kingsway, Jeff Vanderloo, Hyde Park, College Hill, and Penrose. The Missouri National Guard is engaging the threat currently and will provide an all clear when the threat has been neutralized. Stay tuned to local media for further information. The following message is transmitted at the request of the Missouri state government. A large-scale hostile attack against the state of Missouri has been commenced by the state of Illinois. Illinois Army and Air National Guard are attacking along the state border. The city of St. Louis is particularly at risk. This is a civil emergency for the entire state of Missouri. All women, children, elderly, and disabled people are urged to seek shelter. By order of the governor, all able-bodied men of fighting age are required to report to their local National Guard station within the next 72 hours. This is a general mobilization of all combat-capable Missouri males. End of message. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States Capitol Police and the District of Columbia Fire and EMS. Message from the Capitol Police. Riots on Capitol Hill have resulted in the breaching of the Rayburn House Office Building and the Hart Senate Office Building by rioters. These riots are of an extremely deadly and violent nature. This message will be followed by a message from DC Fire and EMS. If DC Fire does not name your area for evacuation, the Capitol Police then urge you to remain in place and seek shelter in an interior room of your structure. Message from DC Fire and EMS. Multiple structure fires are burning in the Capitol Hill area. Fires have been reported at the Rayburn House Office Building, the Longworth House Office Building, the Hart Senate Office Building, the Dirksen Senate Office Building, the Democratic National Committee, the Republican National Committee, Upper Senate Park, Bartholdi Park, the Spirit of Justice Park. The following areas are under an immediate evacuation warning. Areas directly adjacent to the aforementioned fires, as well as Capitol South Station, the 100 block of C Street Southeast, the 100 block of D Street Southeast, Rumsey Court Southeast, St. Peter's Church on Capitol Hill, the Cannon House Office Building, the Library of Congress, the 200 block of C Street Northeast, the 200 block of Maryland Avenue Northeast, and St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church. If your area has been mentioned, evacuate immediately. If you are in the Capitol Hill area and your specific location has not been mentioned, please shelter in place in the safest room of your current structure until law enforcement sources give an all clear.
The following message is transmitted at the request of New York City authorities. A civil emergency message has been issued for New York City at 1:22 a.m. and expiring at 1:22 p.m., 11th of January, 2001. The New York Fire Department and the New York Police Department hereby order all persons in the area of Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn to vacate the area at once and allow for the passage of emergency vehicles. There is a large structure fire burning at Fort Hamilton that threatens nearby areas and structures. If this fire is not contained soon, it will spread to other areas including residential homes. The New York Police Department is arriving with riot control equipment and will forcefully disperse all persons from the area around Fort Hamilton. If you interfere with or in any way hinder the passage of emergency vehicles into Fort Hamilton, you will be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This is a serious situation and federal felony charges will apply. Repeat, all persons occupying Fort Hamilton and its perimeter must disperse immediately or else they will be forcefully removed from the area and prosecuted on federal charges. All other persons in the vicinity are advised to remain away from the area of Fort Hamilton until this civil emergency message expires.
The historic Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn has been abandoned by military authorities this morning after violent clashes last night left most of the base either destroyed or occupied by mobs of violent demonstrators. The military was seen leaving in their vehicles early this morning, headed to their new command base at Camp Smith, north of the city. The fort was left at the mercy of rioters around 3 a.m. this morning, after the police and fire departments gave up their attempts to reach the base to disperse the crowds and fight the blazing infernos that had overtaken much of the fort. Large fires were seen burning through the night as police lines gradually moved farther and farther from the base. Fire officials say
Attention. This is an urgent public service announcement from the citizens of Brooklyn to the rest of New York. Fort Hamilton is now liberated territory of the citizens of Brooklyn. Fort Hamilton is now a community space free of the tyranny of the state and the New York National Guard. The military and the police are not welcome here. Only the citizens are welcome in this space, and this space is for the people. After fighting back the police last night and sending the military running from here, our territory has expanded to include the area of Dyker Beach Park. Barricades have been erected on 86th Street with checkpoints at 7th Avenue and 14th Avenue. All persons are encouraged to join our community of Dyker Beach Park. Tents are being set up at the park along with food and drink vendors. Some barracks at the Fort Hamilton facility still remain usable as well, but these will be allotted on a first-come, first-served basis. Please come to Fort Hamilton or Dyker Beach Park and support your community. A Citizens Defense Force is being established to protect us from the corrupt and murderous local law enforcement. Come serve and protect your community and make a stand for our collective good.
An attempt this afternoon by the military to recapture the occupied Fort Hamilton has faltered after the defection of a high-ranking officer. Colonel Roland Vaughn of the New York Army National Guard, and himself a former resident of Brooklyn, defected with a force of around 70 other soldiers. This gives the Brooklyn occupied zone an advantage much feared by the New York police, and that advantage is organization. For now, attempts to retake the fort by force have been put on hold as military officials say they are willing to negotiate with Colonel Vaughn. We will have more on this story as it develops.
Civil authorities have issued a civil emergency message for New York at 1:15 p.m. effective until 1:15 a.m. tonight. A series of large explosions in southwest Brooklyn has disrupted services in the area. Affected services include roadways, public transit, gas supply, electricity, and plumbing. These disruptions may last an indefinite period of time until damage to infrastructure can be assessed and repaired. Please avoid any areas marked off by law enforcement and follow the directions of all civil authorities including police and fire. Tune to local media for further information on the situation.
Military sources have confirmed to us just now that the explosions which destroyed the Brooklyn occupied zone this morning were the result of a targeted airstrike by an unmanned drone flying high in the skies above New York. Fire authorities, with heavy police and military escort, then reached the perimeter of the zone and began to battle the intense fires from the strike. It is being reported that Colonel Roland Vaughn is believed to be dead along with other senior leadership of his unit and the occupiers at Fort Hamilton. The National Guard has moved back into southwest Brooklyn this afternoon following the strike, which has sent the remaining occupiers of the neighborhood into disarray, with many having already surrendered to police or National Guard. Military hardware is pouring into Brooklyn today to enforce the military's presence here in the borough. The troop count is expected to surge by hundreds, if not thousands, as Mayor Giuliani vows tighter security than ever before in the wake of a civil conflict which has already claimed the lives of some 2,500 people in New York City alone.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Richard Bruce Cheney, do solemnly swear. I, Richard Bruce Cheney, do solemnly swear.
The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States Army. A shelter-in-place warning is in effect for Central D.C. at 2:10 p.m. effective until 3:10 p.m. Due to military activity in the area of the National Mall, all residents of Central D.C. must shelter in place immediately until an all clear is given. The U.S. Army is currently engaged in battle with extremist elements in Central D.C. If you are in Central D.C., seek shelter now for your safety. Attention all Americans. The regime of dictator Cheney has committed political murder. Al Gore was found dead in his home this morning, murdered at the hands of this illegitimate regime. We the people, represented by the Capital Progressive Front, urge all Americans in D.C. and beyond to stand up, rise up, and take up arms against the corrupt and homicidal regime of the Dick. Do not let this injustice stand. Do not give legitimacy to the regime through complacency nor ignorance. American values are under assault, and the time is now to fight and die for the truths we hold self-evident. Let not this tyranny go unpunished. Forever shall the government fear the people, and not the people fear their government. Take action now and immediately for your country, for your values, and for our collective future as Americans.
Attention all persons who received the prior message. This is the National Guard of the District of Columbia. The CBS 9 broadcasting site was hijacked by terrorists who used its airwaves to broadcast a false propaganda message designed to instigate violence against the military. The DC National Guard would like to remind you that any attacks against the military are unlawful and may be met with legal force. To make this extra clear, if you try to kill us, we will kill you. Terrorist activity against the armed forces of the United States is a capital crime, and prosecution will be swift and severe.
The following message is transmitted at the request of the National Guard of the District of Columbia. A civil danger warning has been issued for the District of Columbia, in particular the 6th Ward. Armed insurgents are currently assaulting the D.C. Armory and are being met with fierce and lethal resistance by National Guard forces. The area around the D.C. Armory and the RFK Stadium is now considered an active combat site. Entry into this area at the moment is at your own risk and peril. Authorities are working hard to regain control over the situation, but no safety guarantees can be made until this is accomplished. Military hardware is on the move into the 6th Ward in support of operations at the D.C. Armory. This hardware includes, but may not be limited to, heavy machine guns, armored personnel carriers, armored combat vehicles, and combat aircraft including helicopters. The usage of heavy weaponry in a dense urban area will inevitably cause great amounts of damage to surrounding areas. However, this has been deemed necessary by military authorities due to the scale of the threat being faced and the strategic importance of the D.C. Armory. If you are in the 6th Ward, you are advised to leave the area immediately and without further delay. The military is receiving evacuees from the 6th Ward at Fort Leslie McNair, Bowling Air Force Base, and the Anacostia Naval Support Facility. Evacuees will be met with shelter, food, and safe living quarters. Repeat, the 6th Ward has been advised to evacuate immediately in order to better facilitate the operations of the United States Armed Forces in the area of the D.C. Armory.
Dick Cheney has arrived in Washington for the first time as president today, after spending his first 10 days in office at an undisclosed location outside D.C. Today he met with and personally thanked the hundreds of men and women of the United States Armed Forces who fought to victory last night against insurgent forces in the city. Cheney is expected to meet with congressional Republicans this afternoon regarding the civil conflict. You're watching Washington 4 News on WRC-TV.
This is a local area emergency issued by the civil authorities at the request of the federal government. A bombing and shooting attack has occurred on the northbound lane of the George Washington Memorial Parkway north of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in the area of Fort Bennett Park. The parkway has been closed for a distance of 1 mile northwest of the Key Bridge until further notice. Expect traffic delays on the George Washington Parkway until the situation is resolved. When you are in the area of Fort Bennett Park, shelter in place and stay tuned to local media until the situation has been resolved.
We're learning more now about that ambush-style attack that happened on the George Washington Memorial Parkway this afternoon, just past the Francis Scott Key Memorial Bridge. The attack began around 3:40 this afternoon. It began with a roadside bombing followed by several minutes of sustained gunfire. We also now know the target of the ambush, CIA Director George Tenet. Tenet had just left Washington and was on his way to CIA headquarters in McLean when a roadside bomb exploded just as his vehicle passed by. His vehicle was then riddled with bullets for over 3 minutes by what the Cheney administration calls radical leftist terrorists. A CIA security team exchanged fire with the attackers, but the attackers are said to have left the area and may still be at large according to law enforcement sources. We go now to our intelligence community analyst, Gregory Callahan. What do you make of this attack, Gregory?
It's incredibly odd, Jennifer. First of all, this would be the highest profile attack by insurgent forces to date. This is the director of Central Intelligence we're talking about here. How his route would even be known to insurgents is beyond me. Secondly, the Army and the National Guard have had an impeccable response time to the acts of violence in this country, and yet it took at least 11 minutes for military forces to arrive. And by then, the attackers are said to have been long gone. I'm honestly not sure what to make of this one, Jennifer. It's a very unconventional situation for sure.
This is a civil emergency message issued by civil authorities. There is an ongoing military operation in the vicinity of the White House. Avoid the area of the White House complex until further notice. Entry into the area may be considered interference in a military operation. Those who interfere in any way will be prosecuted. This is a matter of national security. Avoid the area around the White House until authorities give clearance. This is an important administrative message transmitted at the request of the United States federal government. At approximately 11 p.m. last night, the Central Intelligence Agency, in coordination with the U.S. Marshals Service and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, conducted an operation on the grounds of the White House. A federal investigation has connected President Cheney with a wide-reaching criminal conspiracy involving multiple murders. This conspiracy extends to include numerous other figures in the Cheney administration as well as multiple Republicans in Congress. President Cheney has been detained in connection with this conspiracy. Additional arrests are being made currently and will be announced shortly. The Cheney administration has been purged in its entirety and has been replaced by a temporary committee of military and intelligence figures. This committee is headed by General John N. Abrams. A new presidential election is being organized and is scheduled to take place on Wednesday, the 4th of July. After the election, a transitional period will take place, and the United States will restore civilian democracy with the new inauguration on the 20th of September. General Abrams will fill the role of acting president until this time, and then will promptly abdicate the position of acting president at noon on the 20th of September. Please tune to local media for a national televised address by Acting President General Abrams at 3 o'clock Eastern Time, noon Pacific.
The nation is waking up this morning to some shocking news. It was around 10 hours ago that 6 Black Hawk helicopters landed on the south lawn of the White House, commencing an operation that will go down in history as America's first presidential coup. As we wake up this morning, our commander-in-chief is known as Acting President General John N. Abrams. The operation was reportedly led by CIA Acting Director John McLaughlin. Acting President General Abrams will give a press conference regarding the operation at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific. In related news, the White House is in shambles today after sudden and turbulent riots erupted after last night's operation. Mobs of demonstrators angered by the course of events stormed the compromised White House grounds shortly after the conclusion of the operation. Rioters laid waste to the executive mansion with arsons, looting, and vandalism for a period of around an hour before military and police forces were able to clear the damaged building. Citywide havoc has broken out on the streets of Washington in protest of last night's operation. Arsons have engulfed much of Washington overnight, with fires burning in every direction. Demonstrators say it isn't about Cheney, but about the military having control over the American people. General Abrams intends to smooth things over with a press conference, but it seems clear that given the friction between the military and the public as of late, many people don't want to hear it. Sources within
This message is transmitted at the request of the District of Columbia Fire and EMS Department. A fire warning is in effect for the following areas of the District of Columbia, Ward 2 and Ward 6. Multiple structure fires are burning across the aforementioned areas of the city. These fires have grown beyond the point where containment is possible. Specific locations include, but may not be limited to, the White House, the Eisenhower Executive Office Building, the Supreme Court, the Capitol Building, House Office Buildings Rayburn, Longworth, Cannon, Ford, and O'Neill, Senate Office Buildings Hart, Dirksen, and Russell, the Library of Congress, the headquarters of the D.C. Metro Police Department, the headquarters of the U.S. Capitol Police, the Marine Barracks on 8th Street, the State Department headquarters at the Harry S. Truman Federal Building, the Herbert Hoover Federal Building, the Robert F. Kennedy Department of Justice Building, the offices of the Mayor of D.C. at the John Wilson Building. Multiple fires are also burning in parks in the district. The following parks are under a fire warning and are closed until further notice: the National Mall, Lafayette Square, Farragut Square, Franklin Park, Edward J. Kelly Park, Upper Senate Park, Lower Senate Park, Bartholdi Park, Spirit of Justice Park, Stanton Park, Lincoln Park. The entirety of Wards 2 and 6 are advised to evacuate immediately. This is an official evacuation recommendation from DC Fire to evacuate your area swiftly and at once if you are located in the 2nd or 6th wards of DC. For the rest of DC, Wards 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8, advice from DC Fire is to shelter in place and follow all directions from civil authorities, including the DC Fire Department as well as the DC Metro Police and the DC National Guard.